Welcome to Box Office Revival. I'm your host, Brendan Gray, creator of Box Office Mojo, coming at you with the tops of the box for the weekend ending March 23rd, 2025, the weekend of reckoning for Disney's Snow White. And Snow White came in at, well, quick correction here. It came in at $39.5 million. That's the estimate for the weekend proper. You add in the preview grosses, and that's how you get that $43 million total. All right. You know what? I have to do this because it's been bugging me. This whole notion of folding in preview grosses, money made prior to the actual weekend, into the weekend itself, this column. And instead of just factoring it into the total, which is this column, that's where that money goes. It doesn't go here. This is the column for Friday, Saturday, Sunday, not Thursday or Wednesday or some preview screening 2 weekends before, whatever. Ridiculous. So I just have to get that out of here. It's a constant pet peeve, a constant problem with the box office reporting industry. Hey, I'm just telling to you straight, this is trying to give you the objective perspective on the box office here. And you know what? You may think it's just a few million here and there, but sometimes it can make a difference, such as last weekend. And you know what? Last weekend was the bottom of the barrels. This is, I admit, rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic to some degree, but last weekend, Novocaine was not the number one movie, actually. If you take out those preview grosses, it actually did about $7.06 million. And Black Bag, for that matter, was at number two. You take out the preview grosses there, and you get $6.76 million. And oh, lo and behold, look at this. Look at this. Look at this. Mickey 17 was actually the number one movie last weekend. Yes, Mickey 17, flop that it is, was number one for 2 weeks in a row until it was replaced by, well, another, shall we say, disappointing movie at the box office. But hey, roughly $40 million. I guess movie theaters will take it in this very slow market, historically slow market. We are... Oh, man, I just hope this is the nadir of the box office for the year. March is supposed to be booming, people, but still, not even Snow White, not even a big Disney live-action remake could excite moviegoers, and we'll get into more of a breakdown of Snow White because, hey, come on, that's what we're here for, right? We're talking, you know what, we want to talk Snow White. This is the movie that everyone has been talking about for years now. But let me just get these other movies out of the way really quickly. Number 2, Black Bag. So it was actually down only 35% to an estimated $4.4 million, nearly $15 million through its second weekend. No one's seeing that, even though it is number 2. That's how pitiful the box office is. Captain America, though, remarkably, was down only 28%, which is... its best hold yet, and among the best holds of the weekend, if not the best for a nationwide release. That is quite remarkable. It got to $192 million right now through its sixth weekend. Well, sometimes, I got to say, check this out. Both Snow White and Captain America are Disney, so it stands to reason that Disney may have included Captain America with some Snow White, maybe some double billings, maybe at drive-in theaters. That might explain the drop-off here. That sometimes happens. It's technically legit, unlike folding in preview grosses, but bear that in mind. When you see an aberration like this, Captain America down 28%, that may be what is going on here. At any rate, back to the chart. Number 4, Mickey 17, plummeting again to $3.9 million. Oh, man. Whew. Only about $40 million through its third weekend. Yikes. Yikes. That is terrible, 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 terrible box office for Mickey 17. Roughly half the money that Dune Part 2 did in its first weekend last March. Both Warner Brothers releases, both sci-fi movies. But Mickey 17 oddball that it is, to put it kindly, not appealing to really anyone. So Novocaine rounding out the top 5, and this was, took a steeper fall than Black Bag, but it was down 47% actually. Got to correct that to $3.8 million on its estimate. Total is just under $16 million through its second weekend. Again, nobody's seeing this movie. In effect, unfortunately, both Black Bag and Novocaine, these were marketing campaigns for the inevitable streaming release or PVOD release, unfortunately. Debuting outside the top 5, though, the Alto Knights. This is Alto Knights. This is Robert De Niro and Robert De Niro playing dueling mob bosses. Directed by Barry Levinson, in case you don't know, the director of Rain Man, Diner, so many famous movies from yore. But man, $3.2 million, including previews, by the way. Just a pathetic gross for this mob movie. To be fair, this picture may not have had the most marketing, but maybe it wasn't that appealing to begin with. Yikes, that is a terrible number. The Day the Earth Blew Up, the Looney Tunes movie, speaking of Warner Brothers, which Warner Brothers sold to Ketchup Entertainment. That picture was actually down about 37%. Not too shabby, especially in the face of Snow White, another family movie. Taking up screens. Look, it lost screens in its second weekend, but it did $1.8 million. It's, again, no one is seeing it, but I just wanted to point that out. It's a traditionally drawn animated feature. Maybe give that one some support if you're looking for a family movie, and that's not Snow White. And also debuting this weekend, as often the case, very small movies with notable names that nobody goes to see, like Locked. This has got Bill Skarsgård of Nosferatu fame, and less than $1 million. Anthony Hopkins is in this as well. Anthony Hopkins. And still nobody cared or even knew about it. That's probably more what happened. Nobody knew about it. Ash. It's a sci-fi horror picture, I believe, with Isaac Gonzalez and Aaron Paul from Breaking Bad. Again, only just over $700,000. Look at these per theater averages. This is what this is good for. This will tell you if these theaters are ghost towns or not. These are, actually, this is all ghost towns. Even Snow White, you're going to have mostly empty seats. But just imagine what it's like for these pictures down the chart. Magazine Dreams, this is probably the biggest deal here. This is the much delayed Jonathan Majors picture. This was supposed to come out in 2023 to get him a Best Actor nom for the 2023 Oscar season. But of course, he had his legal troubles, so to speak. And this was dropped by its distributor, Fox Searchlight. But Briarcliff picked it up like they picked up The Apprentice last fall. Nobody saw The Apprentice in theaters, the Donald Trump movie with Sebastian Stan. And even fewer people are going to see Magazine Dreams. Anyway, not much going on. So let's get back to the hot topic that is Snow White. Woo. Snow White made less out of the gate than Ghostbusters Frozen Empire did on the same March weekend last year. Actually, let me correct this one for you. It was actually $40.3 million when you subtract those preview grosses, but the point still stands. Disney's live-action remake of one of its all-time princesses could not top the tepid sequel to Ghostbusters Afterlife. Some might say that's pathetic. And I'm not even taking into account how much Snow White cost to make. Much has been made of the production budget for Snow White, that it cost at least $270 million, not including marketing, maybe $400 million plus all in, which means it needs to make $700 plus million to even start to break even, something like that. I'm not even going to concern myself with the financials of it. None of us know what's going on behind the scenes there. That's really speculation. Suffice it to say that it's going to lose money, and more importantly, it's a disappointment in relation to similar movies, to other Disney live-action remakes. And let me show you how this opening stacks up to some key comps. I'll include the Thursday previews here, so we're talking about Thursday through Sunday openings. And with that $43 million estimate, Snow White did less than half of the $96 million that The Little Mermaid debuted to in May of 2023. And that was the last major live-action princess movie. But in the media, you often hear Snow White being compared to Dumbo because that one came out in March as well, but in 2019. And Dumbo opened about $46 million. If you adjust for ticket price inflation, that would be the equivalent of at least $55 million today. And I'm using a very conservative $11 average ticket price for 2025, effectively 20% more than it was in 2019. It may be a bit more. In fact, Snow White's average this weekend was closer to $14. But again, we'll stick with the $11 just to be as charitable and generous as Snow White herself. So, moving on. Also in 2019 was Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, which was considered a big dud. That picture opened to $37 million, but twinkle, twinkle, adjust that to $44 million. Mistress of Evil did more business than Snow White, the sequel to the villain spin-off movie that, oh man, that's just incredible. That really puts into perspective just how badly Snow White is doing. But I got more for you here. More. Of course, Beauty and the Beast. I mean, this is why we're in the world we're living in, why Disney keeps making these things, because Disney's Beauty and the Beast did $175 million back in March of 2017. And if you adjust for ticket price inflation, boom, $214 million. Whoa, that's an incredible, incredible debut. That picture did well over $1 billion worldwide. But moving on, I think a more apt comparison, because now we're talking a classical princess as opposed to a Disney Renaissance princess like Belle or Ariel. Cinderella. Cinderella, back in 2015, March, again. This is a good month, has been a good month until Snow White and Dumbo for Disney. But Cinderella debuted to $68 million, and voila, you adjust that for ticket price inflation, you get nearly $90 million, if not more. So again, Snow White doing less than half the business of Cinderella, which also makes sense because I think Cinderella is a more universally appealing story, has been adapted many times and successfully outside of the Disney world. Snow White, not so much, but it was relatively successful with Snow White and the Huntsman back in 2012. That picture debuted to $56 million back in the day, but if you adjust for ticket price inflation, it's the equivalent of nearly $80 million today. So almost double, not quite, but still much bigger. And this was like an edgier version of Snow White, but it seemed like the new Snow White kind of copied some of the themes. If you looked at the trailer, it's like at least they promised that Snow White would lead a rebellion against the evil queen, but not that actually happened in the movie itself. But there's one thing that Snow White can claim, because this is probably tonally more similar to Mirror, Mirror, also in 2012. That picture only did $18 million, and if you adjust for ticket price inflation, that's nearly $25 million today. So Snow White can claim it did better than the Snow White movie Mirror, Mirror from 2012. That starred Julia Roberts, I think, as the evil queen. So one victory for Snow White. There you go. And Snow White can legitimately claim to be the #1 movie in the world right now, with an estimated $87.3 million, which is the 44.3 internationally, plus the 43 domestically. Hey, being #1 worldwide, Disney's last big movie, Captain America: Brave New World, could never be that. Even though it made more money, it was always playing second fiddle to Ne Zha 2. Ne Zha 2, by the way, sitting at $2.1 billion worldwide, the highest grossing animated feature of all time, which is one of the highest grossing movies of all time, period. And before you adjust for ticket price inflation and whatnot, yeah, of course. But by far the biggest movie of the year. We'll see if anything else can catch Ne Zha 2. But going back to Snow White, $87 million. The lowered projections were 100 million going into the weekend, and it could not even match that. It's even worse when you compare it to Mufasa, The Lion King, which did 122 in its debut last December. So what I would say is that even if Snow White didn't cost at least $270 million to make, this is still a big disappointment. You don't make a big adaptation of Snow White, the fairest of them all, and only expect to make 87 million in its opening and maybe 300 million overall at the end of the day. That first Snow White movie, by the way, the original 1937, if you adjust for ticket price inflation, that made the equivalent of 1.2 billion today, domestically alone. Highest grossing or most attended animated feature in America of all time was the original Snow White from 1937. And now the live action adaptation is one of the least attended Disney adaptations of recent memory. And the few who did see it apparently were not in love with it. As you can see here, Snow White scored a B+ on CinemaScore, which is the firm that polls opening night moviegoers. B+, that's the lowest grade yet for a Disney live action adaptation. B+. Even those Maleficent movies scored in the A range. I mean, B+. CinemaScore, the grades don't work like grades at school. It's more like the Richter scale here. So every step there's a huge gulf. So if your family picture is getting less than A range, it's not looking good potentially for word of mouth. And it's a shame because movie theaters could use some good news. Overall, the weekend box office came to about $76 million, and that was down 27% from the same weekend last year when we had Ghostbusters Frozen Empire and we had Kung Fu Panda 4 in the market, Dune 2 in the market, and other movies. It was just a more exciting time at the multiplex a year ago, and we're seeing it show in the overall box office. 2025 is now running 5% behind 2024, 16% behind 2023 at the same point in time. And that's not what we want for a box office revival. And if you're looking for an objective perspective on the movies and the box office, I invite you to like and subscribe. But that's it for now. Thank you for watching.